On the day I went with Carter Davis for our pre-wedding health checkup, the nurse looked up from her clipboard and gave him a second glance. "Carter? Weren't you just here last week?" He paused for a microsecond, then smiled warmly. "You must have me confused with someone else." On the way back, he squeezed my hand. "We're getting our marriage license at City Hall next month." "Nervous?" "A little," I said. The next day, I took a half-day off and went back to the clinic. I didn't book an appointment. I just walked straight to the reception desk and asked one question. "My fiancé was here last week. What department did he visit?" The nurse looked at me, hesitating for a long time. Finally, she uttered two words. "OBGYN." I stood in the clinic lobby. Outside, the sky was a brilliant mocking blue. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Carter. "Booked the wedding photo shoot for Saturday. What style do you like?" I swiped the notification away and opened the City Hall appointment portal. I clicked cancel. The system flashed a prompt. "Please state your reason for cancellation." I typed in, "The groom has already started a new family with someone else. Why didn't you reply to my text today?" Carter's voice came through the receiver, carrying his usual, perfectly measured tone of concern. I had been sitting on the plastic bench in the clinic lobby for 40 minutes. The seat was ice cold, and the metal armrest behind my back felt even colder. My phone was on silent. I didn't notice. "Where are you? It sounds noisy." "Just at the mall walking around." He let out a soft chuckle. "Buy whatever you want. I'll transfer you the money on PayPal." "Okay," I said. After hanging up, I placed the phone screen down on my lap. The lobby speakers kept announcing numbers, calling patient after patient to various departments. I listened for 40 minutes. I didn't hear the word OBGYN again, but those letters were already burned into my brain. OBGYN. I started tracing back through our relationship. 9 months ago, we met on a blind date set up by our families. Carter was 8 minutes late. The moment he sat down, he ordered a hot Americano for me. He said, "I saw on your Instagram that you posted a latte with foam art. It's 96 degrees today, so you probably wanted an iced coffee. But drinking iced coffee on a first date might seem too casual. So hot Americano is the perfect compromise." At the time, I thought he was incredibly observant. Now I realized he wasn't observant. He was just calculating. 3 months into dating, he took me to meet his parents. His mother, Eleanor, looked at me over the dinner table not as a future daughter-in-law, but like a customer comparing two similar brands on a supermarket shelf. She said something that stayed with me. "Carter has always been independent. I don't interfere with his choices." The emphasis was on the word choices. A choice, not love. I thought I was being paranoid back then, but sitting on this hard clinic bench, I finally understood. She was telling me that I was just a choice he made, but I wasn't necessarily the only one. My phone buzzed again. Carter sent a 3-second voice message. I tapped it. He said with a warm smile, "I miss you." 3 words. His tone was as steady as if he had rehearsed it 1,000 times. I locked my phone, stood up, and walked out of the clinic. I took an Uber home. The first thing I did when I got back was open the jewelry box on my nightstand. My Nana's diamond earrings were still there. They were clip-ons because Nana always said, "Earlobes sag when you get old. Clip-ons can be taken off anytime." I clenched the earrings in my palm. The metal clips dug into my skin, causing a dull ache. Then I made a decision. I wouldn't confront him yet. Not because I was hesitating, but because I needed to figure out one thing. In this relationship, who exactly was I? Was I really his fiancé, or just a prop in someone else's story? At 7 p.m., Carter arrived. He brought takeout and a bouquet of baby's breath. He never showed up empty-handed. "You're quiet today," he said, looking at me while unpacking the food. "Toothache." "Then don't smile too big during the photo shoot on Saturday. I don't want you in pain." He transitioned seamlessly, his expression tender and his logic flawless. I kept my head down, my fork hovering over a piece of steak for half a second. How do you always have the perfect response to everything? Because you don't even have to think about the words you say. They are like prepackaged meals. You just heat them up and serve them. When he went to take a shower, I picked up his phone. There was no passcode. He was confident enough not to set one. Not because he had no secrets, but because he was absolutely certain I would never snoop. 3 chats were pinned at the top of his iMessage, me, his mom, and someone named Audrey. The last message from Audrey was sent at 2 p.m. today. "The checkup went well. The baby is healthy. Waiting for you." It was accompanied by an ultrasound photo. I scrolled up. Audrey's profile picture was a side profile of a girl with a tiny mole on her collarbone. There were too many messages, so I only scrolled through the past month. Within 3 minutes, I discovered 3 things. She called him babe, and he called her my sweet Audrey. The way they talked was completely different from how he talked to me. It was softer, more casual, more genuine. 3 days ago, he had texted her, "Just wait a little longer. I'll break it off with her right after the wedding photo shoot." Her. I was that her. The sound of running water continued in the bathroom. I took screenshots of 3 key conversations, emailed them to myself, deleted the screenshots and the sent mail trail, and placed the phone back exactly where it was. By the time he came out, I was curled up on the sofa watching a home renovation show. What do you think of this color palette? We should do our house like this. Looks great, he said, smiling as he rubbed his wet hair with a towel. I smiled back. Why isn't the bride smiling? The makeup artist's hand hovered over my cheek, her brush coated in blush. I said, just keep it natural, please. In the mirror, I looked ethereal in my simple white lace gown. I had opted out of the tiara and the long train. Carter was next to me, changing into a gray suit. The collar was perfectly pressed. He walked over, wrapped his arms around my waist, rested his chin on my head, and gave the camera a warm, picture-perfect smile. The photographer smiled. The groom is very photogenic. Of course he was. He had practice. During the break, an assistant casually mentioned while packing up a light stand, "Mr. Davis, do you want to try the same lighting style from your last shoot? I still have the angles saved." Carter's face went stiff for a split second. Just a split second. Then he laughed it off. "You must have me confused with someone else. This is my first time here." The assistant looked confused but was quickly pulled away by the photographer. Carter turned to me, his expression as natural as if nothing had happened. "Tired? Want some water?" "I've fine," he replied. When he went to change into his next suit, I found the assistant. "What kind of photos did he take here last time?" The assistant hesitated for 2 seconds. "Maternity photos. I think it was for his sister?" He said she was his sister. The girl had a pretty big bump already. "Thank you," I said, walking back to the shooting area. Carter was already changed. He was wearing the same gray suit. I recognized it now. He was wearing this exact suit in the ultrasound photo. Same brand, probably the exact same one. "Come on, last set," he said, reaching his hand out to me. I walked over and stood by his side. The shutter clicked 40 times. Every single time, his smile was mathematically precise. On the drive home, Carter kept his right hand resting on my knee. The car stereo was playing a slow R&B track from my playlist. He said, "This is a good song. Who recommended it?" I found it myself. "Ah." I noticed his fingers tapping on my knee 3 times, but the rhythm was faster than the song playing. I recognized that beat from Audrey's chat logs. He had sent her a song once, and the intro had that exact tempo. The music playing in his head wasn't the one coming from my car speakers. That night, I washed off my makeup in the bathroom. In the mirror, my eyes looked a bit sunken, my cheekbones more prominent. In 9 months of living in a fake relationship, I had lost 6 pounds. My phone buzzed. Carter had posted a grid of 9 wedding photos on Instagram. His caption read, "She said yes, and that's all that matters." The comment section exploded. Colleagues, friends, and distant relatives were all leaving congratulations. His mother liked the post and commented, "Finally." I finally understood what those 7 letters meant. She wasn't waiting for me. She was waiting for someone who could play the part of the perfect wife, so her son could fulfill his duty. I put down my phone and opened Carter's old iPad. I had found it 3 days ago in a toolbox in his trunk. His secondary iMessage account was logged in, and he had only one contact, Audrey. Their Snapchat was filled with their daily life. Cooking together, shopping at local farmers markets, eating bagels outside the clinic after her prenatal checkup, and a candid photo of her sleeping on his shoulder. The latest post was from yesterday, the same day as our wedding photo shoot. After we finished shooting in the afternoon, he had gone to Audrey's place in the evening. He had posted a picture of her hand resting on her pregnant belly. The caption was, "Waiting for you. These words are enough to get me through a lifetime." I closed the iPad. I didn't take any screenshots. I didn't need any more evidence. What I needed was the right moment. "Working late tonight. Won't make it over." Carter's iMessage voice memo was short. The background noise sounded like an office. I replied with a simple, "Okay." Then I did something I had never done before. I followed him. His car pulled out of his office garage, but he didn't head toward his usual route. He turned left and stopped in front of a quiet, older apartment complex in the suburbs. I parked across the street and turned off the ignition. A warm yellow light was on the 3rd floor. The curtains had a floral pattern, and a potted ivy sat on the windowsill. He carried 2 grocery bags upstairs. His steps were light. When he reached the door, he didn't knock. He used his own key to open it. That door didn't require any ceremony for him because that was his real home. I stood downstairs for 20 minutes. The window on the 3rd floor cast 2 silhouettes. One stirring something at the stove, the other sitting by the table with a hand on her belly. The one at the stove brought over a plate, sat down, and turned to say something. Both shadows were laughing. It wasn't the secretive, tense laughter of an affair. It was just cooking, eating, talking, and laughing. A complete, mundane family routine. I was the outsider. When I walked down, I passed the mailboxes on the ground floor. The label for Unit 301 had two names written side by side in the same handwriting: Carter Davis and Audrey Pearson. In this apartment complex, they were an open couple. Only in front of me did this reality cease to exist. Back at my apartment, I took out the cherries Carter had brought over last week from the fridge. I washed a few and took a bite. They were sweet. I ate another one, still sweet. But I didn't want to eat them anymore. Because in Audrey's chat logs she had written, "Babe brought home so many cherries today, we can't even finish them." He had bought 2 batches from the same store. I threw the rest of the cherries into the trash. I opened my laptop and created a new Excel sheet. On the left column, I wrote me and Carter. On the right column, Carter and Audrey. I charted the dates precisely. For 9 months, the 2 timelines ran in perfect parallel. Not a single day was missed. One date was highlighted in red: 4 months ago. My birthday. Carter had given me a necklace, took me out for sushi, and posted a picture of us smiling on Instagram. But on that very day, Audrey's log showed he had accompanied her to her first major ultrasound at 3 p.m. On my birthday, he went to see his unborn child first before coming over to blow out my candles. I recalled him being 40 minutes late that night. When he walked in, his scarf smelled faintly of disinfectant. I had asked him about it, and he said he had stopped by a pharmacy to grab some cold medicine for a colleague. And I had believed him. Every time I trusted him, I was just signing off on my own stupidity. I scrolled to another date from 2 months ago. He had told me he was going on a 3-day business trip. He sent me a selfie from a hotel room, writing, "Miss you, sleep tight." But Audrey's records showed he was in another state during those 3 days, meeting her parents. Audrey had posted a group photo. Carter was sitting at a round dining table, and the middle-aged couple opposite him were beaming. Her caption was, "Mom and Dad finally met you. Mom says you're even handsomer in person." He had met the parents on both sides. Both lines were moving forward. I closed my laptop, picked up my phone and texted him. "The photos from Saturday are ready. Which ones do you want to select for the final edits?" Carter replied instantly, "You choose. I trust your taste." He always knew the right thing to say. Always. I selected a photo of the 2 of us facing away from the camera. Our faces completely obscured. I sent that one to the studio for final editing. "Chloe, there's something I want to talk to you about." On Friday night, Carter came out of the shower, his wet hair messy as he sat on the sofa. He spoke slower than usual, as if he were carefully rehearsing every word. I set down my mug. He said, "I have a childhood friend named Audrey. She's in a bit of a mess recently. She got pregnant, but the guy walked out on her. She's all alone now with nowhere to stay. I was thinking of letting her crash at my old studio apartment for a while, the small one near my office." He looked at me, his eyes clear, honest, and filled with a gentle plea. "Don't worry, there's nothing going on between us. I'm just trying to be a good friend." If I didn't know the truth, I would have said, "Of course, go ahead and help her." I almost did. Instead, I smiled. "Sure, go ahead. Is there anything I can do to help?" He visibly relaxed and chuckled, reaching out to ruffle my hair. "No need. Just don't overthink it, okay?" On Sunday, I casually suggested going over to his studio apartment to help clean up. "Since your friend is moving in after all." He hesitated for a second. "No need, I already cleaned it." "You're a guy, you probably missed some spots. Let me help you wipe down the windows." He couldn't find a way to refuse, so he agreed. When we got to the studio apartment, he had arrived 30 minutes ahead of me. The moment I walked in, I smelled 3 distinct scents: air freshener, laundry detergent, and a very faint trace of baby powder. The first 2 were meant to cover up the third, but the third had leaked through. I helped him wipe down the windows in the living room. As I bent down, my fingers brushed against the gap between the radiator and the wall. My fingertips touched something hard. I pulled it out. It was a diamond clip-on earring. I froze for 3 seconds. Last Wednesday, Carter had come over to my place. Before leaving, he said, "I put your jewelry box back in the cabinet. I accidentally knocked it over earlier." I had checked it then. Both earrings were there. But I had only glanced at them. I didn't count them. I pulled out my phone and checked a photo of my jewelry box. Only 1 earring remained. He had stolen my Nana's earring. I clutched the earring and walked into the bedroom. Carter was folding clothes. Seeing the expression on my face, he asked, "What's wrong?" I opened my hand. The earring lay in the center of my palm, the diamond catching the light. "Care to explain this?" His expression went through 3 distinct phases: blankness, calculation, and then a practiced smile. "Oh, that? Audrey saw you wearing them once and thought they were beautiful. I told her I'd help her find a similar pair, so I borrowed one to show her the design. I meant to tell you, but it slipped my mind." "Where is the other one then? Get it back for me." "It's with her. I'll get it tomorrow." Now, he was caught off guard. "She's not home today." "Not home? I thought you said she hadn't moved in yet." He pressed his lips together, remaining silent for 2 seconds. "I meant she hasn't fully moved in. She just brought some of her things over first. I didn't press further. I walked out to the balcony and pulled back the drying sheets hanging on the rack. There were indentations of 2 pillows, one large and one small. I opened the washing machine. Inside was a men's t-shirt and a maternity dress, tangled together. Carter stood at the balcony door, his composure finally crumbling. "Chloe, listen to me." I didn't listen. I walked to the front door and started putting on my shoes. He rushed over and grabbed my wrist. I turned to look at him. "Carter, do you have any idea how much those earrings mean to me?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He had taken my most precious possession, and yet he didn't feel a shred of guilt. I wrenched my wrist free and pulled open the door. The hallway lights were motion activated. My footsteps turned on the bulbs one by one, illuminating each flight of stairs, then fading to black behind me. His voice echoed from above, growing more distant. "Chloe, it's not what you think, Chloe." I reached the lobby. A taxi pulled up in front of the building, and a woman stepped out of the back seat. She had a round, pregnant belly, a floral dress, a pale face, and dry lips. She was holding a bag of fruit and a bag of baby clothes. She saw me and froze. "Are you, Chloe?" I didn't move. She looked down at her own left hand. A ring was on her ring finger. It was an antique diamond ring set in silver. I recognized that diamond. It was part of the set that went with Nana's earrings. The earrings were passed down to me, and the ring was given to my mom. My mom told me last year that she had lost the ring. Audrey's voice was barely a whisper. Carter gave this to me. He said it was an old family heirloom." The two of us stood under the dim streetlights of the apartment complex, staring at each other for what felt like an eternity. She was the first to cry. It wasn't the dramatic cry of a villain. It was the quiet, shoulder-shaking sob of a woman 6 months pregnant who had suddenly realized the truth. Her lips turned white as she bit down on them. I didn't cry. I walked over, pulled the earring from my pocket, and placed it on the concrete pillar next to the street lamp, right beside her ring. "He told you this was a family heirloom?" "It belonged to my Nana. She passed away last year." Carter ran down from the stairs. The moment he saw the two of us standing together, he stopped dead in his tracks. His mask of perfect expressions shattered completely for the first time. The silence under the streetlight felt heavy enough to crush bone. Carter stood 10 feet away on the concrete steps, his handsome face frozen in a mask of absolute, unadulterated shock. His hair was still damp from his shower, sticking to his forehead in messy dark strands. For 9 months his 2 parallel worlds had spun on separate axes, perfectly timed, mathematically controlled. Now, the 2 worlds had collided right outside his front door. Audrey looked at the diamond clip-on earring resting on the cold concrete pillar. Beside her ring, her hand shook so violently that the bag of fresh fruit slipped from her fingers, the heavy red apples rolling across the damp pavement and stopping at Carter's feet. "A family heirloom?" Audrey whispered, her voice cracking as she stared at the silver ring on her finger. You told me your grandmother gave this to your mother, and your mother gave it to you for your future wife." She looked at me, her eyes wide, brimming with tears that spilled over her pale, hollow cheeks. "Is this your mother's ring?" Audrey asked me, her voice barely audible over the hum of a passing delivery truck. "It belonged to my mother," I said smoothly. "My father bought it for her on their 5th anniversary. It disappeared from her jewelry dish 3 months ago. After Carter came over for Sunday dinner, my mother cried for 2 days thinking she had misplaced it." Carter took a fast, aggressive step forward. The smooth, measured tone he usually wore like a tailored suit was completely gone. "Chloe, don't do this here," he hissed, reaching out to grab my arm. "Come upstairs. We can talk about this rationally. Audrey is pregnant, she's emotionally unstable right now." "Don't touch her," Audrey suddenly shrieked. She ripped the silver ring off her swollen finger with such force that it scraped skin off her knuckle. She hurled the ring straight at Carter's chest. It struck his jacket with a dull metallic clack before bouncing into the gutter. Carter flinched, staring at the ring lying in the muddy water. "Audrey, stop throwing a tantrum." "A tantrum?" Audrey laughed, a high, broken sound that turned into a ragged sob. "I lived in a cramped 30-square-meter apartment for 6 months eating instant noodles because you told me we had to keep our marriage quiet until your company went public. You told me she was a crazy, obsessed stalker your family forced you to date. You told me she was bribing your mother to stay in your life." She pointed a trembling finger at my white lace dress, at my calm, unbothered posture. "She isn't a stalker," Audrey choked out, turning her bloodshot eyes to Carter. "She's the woman in the wedding photo shoot you took on Saturday. She's the woman on your Instagram that your mother likes every single day." Carter didn't look at Audrey. He kept his eyes locked on me. He knew Audrey was already caught in his web, pregnant, dependent, emotionally broken. But I was slipping through his fingers, and his control-obsessed brain couldn't process. "Chloe, Carter said, stepping closer, his voice dropping into that soft, hypnotic register he used whenever he wanted to soothe me. You're upset about the earrings and the ring. I get it. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have taken them without asking. I'll buy your mom a new set, double the clarity, triple the carat weight. Just come inside. Let me explain. I looked at his face. I looked at his eyes, not a trace of genuine remorse, only the desperate, frantic calculation of a man trying to patch a leaking dam. Explain what, Carter? I asked softly. Explain why you took my Nana's clip-on earring to show Audrey the design. Or explain why you took my mom's ring to put on her finger? I reached into my bag, pulled out a small wet wipe, and slowly wiped my fingers where his skin had touched my wrist earlier. I tossed the used wipe into the trash bin by the streetlight. Keep the studio apartment, I said. Keep the cherries. Keep the gray suit. I turned on my heel and walked toward the street. Chloe, stop, Carter yelled, running down the steps. Before he could reach me, Audrey collapsed onto the concrete pillar, clutching her stomach with a low gasp of pain. Carter, my stomach, it hurts. Carter froze in the middle of the pavement, looking at my retreating back, then back at Audrey writhing in pain on the ground. His face twisted in agonizing frustration, the ultimate glitch in his perfect algorithm. He couldn't leave a 6 months pregnant woman bleeding on the street without risking a manslaughter charge or a massive public scandal, but if he let me walk away tonight, his pristine life as the perfect groom was over. I didn't wait to see which choice his math dictated. I raised my hand, hailed a yellow cab, and stepped inside. As the car pulled away from the curb, I looked through the rear window. Under the sickly yellow glow of the street lamp, Carter was kneeling in the dirt, trying to pull Audrey up while his eyes remained fixated on the red taillights of my taxi. For the first time in 9 months, I took a deep, full breath. The air tasted cold, metallic, and utterly pure. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I took a half day and drove straight to my parents' house in the suburban hills. My mother was in the garden, watering her hydrangeas. When she saw me walk through the gate carrying a small bakery box of her favorite almond croissants, her face lit up. Chloe, sweetie, what a surprise. Isn't Carter working today? I set the box on the glass patio table. Mom, do you remember that silver antique ring you lost 3 months ago? The one from Nana's estate. My mother's smile faltered, replaced by a sad sigh. Of course I remember. It broke my heart. I searched every drawer in the house. I even thought maybe the cleaning lady took it, but I didn't want to accuse her without proof. It wasn't the cleaning lady, I said, pulling out my phone and opening a photo I had taken last night. I zoomed in on Audrey's hand resting against the street lamp. Is this it? My mother leaned in, adjusting her reading glasses. Her eyes widened in absolute shock. That's my ring. Where did you find this? Who is this girl? I sat down across from her, my voice calm, flat, and entirely steady as I laid out the entire timeline of the last 9 months. I told her about the OBGYN clinic. I told her about the parallel calendars, the maternity photos in the gray suit, the cherries, the stolen earrings, and the 6 months pregnant woman living in Carter's studio apartment. My mother's face turned from confusion to pale horror, and finally to a dark, shaking rage. That absolute scoundrel. My mother gasped, slamming her teacup down so hard the porcelain cracked. He sat at my dining table 2 weeks ago and called me Mom. He drank your father's whiskey and promised to take care of you forever. He didn't want a wife, Mom, I said smoothly. He wanted a trophy to present to his mother and a shadow to keep at home. We are calling off the wedding immediately. She stood up, reaching for her phone. I'm calling Eleanor right now. I will ruin that family. No, Mom. I reached out and gently laid my hand over hers. Don't call Eleanor. My mother blinked. Why not? Because Eleanor already knows. I pulled up the second set of screenshots, the ones from Carter's iPad. Among the daily Snapchats was an iMessage thread between Carter and his mother, Eleanor, from 2 months ago. Eleanor, did you make sure the girl signed the non-disclosure agreement regarding the baby? Carter, yes, Mom. She thinks I'm marrying her after the business goes public. Eleanor, good. Keep Chloe happy. Her father's firm just signed the logistics contract with our group. We cannot afford a scandal before the quarterly report. My mother stared at the screen, her body trembling with outrage. They used us. They used our family's reputation to back their company's loans. Yes, I smiled. It wasn't a sad smile. It was the cold, sharp smile of a strategist who had just found the king's hidden flank. So calling off the wedding quietly in private is too merciful. What are you going to do? My mother asked, her voice trembling. Next Friday is our official pre-wedding rehearsal dinner at the Grand Hyatt, I said. Eleanor invited 200 guests, all their board members there, investors and the city's press. She wanted to showcase the perfect union between the Davis Group and our family. I picked up an almond croissant and took a small, crisp bite. We are going to give her a show she will never forget. 3 hours later, I received a text from an unknown number. This is Audrey. We need to talk. We met at a quiet tea house near the university, far away from Carter's usual haunts. Audrey sat across from me in a booth near the back. She looked terrible. Her skin was sallow, her eyes bloodshot, and she kept clutching her stomach with a protective, frantic energy. When I sat down, she didn't look at me with the arrogance she had shown at the complex. She looked small, terrified, and utterly hollowed out. He told me his mother hated him, Audrey whispered, her fingers tearing a paper napkin into tiny shreds. He told me his family was forcing him into an arranged marriage with an heiress he despised. He said if he didn't marry you, his mother would cut off his inheritance and kick him out of the family firm. And you believed him? I asked, sipping my warm barley tea. He bought me a crib. Audrey wept quietly, tears dripping onto her lap. He came over every single night at 8 p.m. to rub my back when I had morning sickness. He brought me fresh cherries. He showed me blueprints of a house in the countryside where he said we would live after he escaped his family. I let out a soft, dry chuckle. He brought you cherries because the fruit stand is right next to my apartment. He visited you at 8 p.m. because my gym class runs from 7:30 to 9:30 every Tuesday and Thursday. Audrey froze. The napkin shreds slipped from her fingers. He didn't escape anything, Audrey. I continued, looking her dead in the eye. He was using your pregnancy to satisfy his desire for a real family while using my family's money to build his corporate empire. To him, you are an emotional indulgence, and I am a business transaction. Neither of us is a human being. Audrey buried her face in her hands, letting out a stifled, agonizing whimper. I went to the hospital last night after you left. The doctor said my stress levels are dangerously high. I almost had a miscarriage. Where was Carter? He was on the phone in the hallway. Audrey sneered through her tears, her voice dripping with venom. He was talking to his mother. I heard him say, "Don't worry, Mom. Chloe just had a little mood swing over some old jewelry. I'll buy her a diamond necklace tomorrow and she'll be fine." She looked up at me, her eyes flashing with a sudden, dangerous clarity. He thinks women are toys he can buy with shiny stones, Audrey spat. Yes, I said, leaning forward across the table. So Audrey, do you want to help me break his favorite toy? Audrey stared at me for 3 seconds. Then slowly a cold, bitter smile spread across her pale lips. Tell me what to do. Friday evening arrived. The grand ballroom of the Hyatt Regency was illuminated by thousands of crystal chandeliers casting a warm, golden glow over 200 impeccably dressed guests. Waiters in crisp black tuxedos glided through the crowd carrying silver trays of vintage champagne. High society reporters from the city's business journal were chatting near the entrance, snapping photos of corporate titans and local politicians. At the center of the room stood Eleanor Davis, wearing a floor-length emerald silk gown and a massive pearl necklace. She was beaming, surrounded by 3 female board members of the Davis Group. Oh, Eleanor, you must be thrilled. One of the women gushed. Carter and Chloe are such a handsome couple. And your 2 families merging logistics networks? It's the deal of the century. Eleanor raised her glass, her chin held high. Thank you, darling. Carter has always been so disciplined. He knows his duty to this family. Chloe is a lovely girl, so quiet, so obedient. She will make a fine addition to our household. Standing a few feet away, Carter was dressed in a bespoke charcoal tuxedo. His hair was slicked back flawlessly, his posture immaculate. To anyone looking, he was the picture-perfect groom, a brilliant, rising corporate star on the brink of absolute success. Only I knew that beneath his crisp white collar, his neck was stiff with tension. For the past 6 days, I had played the part of the compliant, slightly hurt bride. I hadn't answered his calls, but I had sent him a brief text 3 days ago. I'll see you at the rehearsal dinner. Let's make it perfect. He had taken that text as my total surrender. In his mind, I had swallowed my pride, accepted his flimsy excuses about helping an old friend, and fallen back into line just as his mathematical calculations predicted. At 8:30 p.m., the chime echoed through the hall, signaling the start of the formal toasts. Eleanor stepped up to the small stage, tapping her crystal glass with a silver spoon. The room fell into an expectant, polite hush. Welcome, dear friends, honored partners and family. Eleanor's voice boomed softly through the microphone, smooth and practiced. Tonight we gather to celebrate not just a union of 2 hearts, but the merging of 2 great legacies. My son, Carter, has worked tirelessly to prepare for this day. She gestured toward Carter, who offered the crowd a modest, perfectly rehearsed smile. And now, Eleanor beamed, looking toward the side entrance of the stage. I would like to invite our beautiful bride-to-be, Chloe, to say a few words. The crowd broke into enthusiastic applause. I stepped onto the stage. I was not wearing the soft, pastel pink gown Eleanor had chosen for me. I was wearing a sharp, custom-tailored white silk suit with a plunging neckline, my hair pulled back into a high, commanding ponytail. I wore no jewelry, except for my mother's silver antique ring, which sat prominently on my right middle finger. Carter's eyes narrowed slightly as he noticed the suit, a micro flicker of unease crossing his face. I stepped up to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and smiled at the 200 guests below. Thank you, Eleanor. My voice echoed clearly through the speaker system. And thank you to everyone for coming tonight. When Carter and I first met 9 months ago on a family blind date, he ordered a hot Americano for me. A few older guests chuckled warmly. He told me it was the perfect compromise between casual and formal. I continued, my voice smooth as velvet. And for 9 months I thought Carter was a man of extraordinary compromise. But recently I realized that Carter doesn't compromise. He just calculates. Eleanor's smile stiffened slightly on the front row. Carter took a half step forward toward the stage, his brow furrowing. Chloe, what are you? You see, I cut him off, clicking a small wireless presenter remote I had been holding in my palm. Carter is a man of incredible efficiency. Why live one life when you can run two in perfect parallel? Flash. The massive 50-foot LED screen behind the stage, meant to play a romantic slideshow of our childhood photos, suddenly lit up. The ballroom went dead quiet. Displayed on the screen in crystal clear, high-definition 4K resolution was a split-screen Excel spreadsheet. On the left side, me and Carter. On the right side, Carter and Audrey. Below the headers were 40 rows of side-by-side timestamps, receipts, location, tags, and chat logs. Row 12, October 14th, 3 p.m. Carter accompanies Audrey to first trimester ultrasound. October 14th, 7 p.m. Carter attends Chloe's 26th birthday party with sushi. Row 24, November 2nd. Carter tells Chloe he is on a 3-day business trip to Chicago. November 2nd, group photo of Carter meeting Audrey's parents at a dinner table. Row 38, last Saturday, 2 p.m. Carter shoots wedding photos with Chloe in a gray suit. Last Saturday, 6 p.m. Carter posts a photo resting his hand on Audrey's pregnant belly in the exact same gray suit. A collective, horrified gasp rippled through the 200 guests. What is this? A board member in the front row blurted out. Eleanor's face turned from pale white to a dark, apoplectic purple. Turn it off. Turn that screen off right now, she screamed toward the AV booth. Don't bother, Eleanor, I said into the microphone, my voice completely unbothered. My team locked the server room 10 minutes ago. The feed is also currently live streaming on the local financial news portal. Carter's composure vanished entirely. He sprinted up the stage steps, his face contorted in violent, panic-stricken rage. Chloe, are you insane? Shut this down. He reached out to snatch the microphone from my hand, but 2 heavy-set men in dark suits, security guards hired by my father, stepped onto the stage instantly, blocking Carter's path and shoving him back. There's one more thing, I said, pointing my finger toward the grand double doors at the back of the ballroom. The heavy mahogany doors swung open. Walking down the center aisle, wearing a simple black maternity dress, her 6 months pregnant belly clearly visible, was Audrey. In her hands she carried a velvet tray containing 3 items. 1. The stolen diamond clip-on earring. 2. The official police report for grand theft filed against Carter Davis by my mother 2 hours ago. 3. The certified OBGYN paternity confirmation records naming Carter as the biological father. Audrey walked straight up to the stage, set the tray on the speaker's podium, right in front of the news cameras, and looked at Carter with an icy, unforgiving stare. He told me I was his wife. Audrey's voice echoed through the room via her own lapel mic, and he told me this family ring belonged to his grandmother. But it belongs to Chloe's mother. He's a thief. The room erupted into absolute, unadulterated chaos. Reporters pushed forward, flashbulbs exploding like a lightning storm against Carter's pale, sweat-drenched face. Investors were shouting at Eleanor, board members were walking out in disgust. Guests were pulling out their phones, filming every second of the nightmare. Carter, Eleanor shrieked, clutching her chest as she collapsed into her chair. Our stock. The company's reputation. What have you done? Carter stood in the center of the stage, surrounded by flashing cameras, screaming reporters, and the cold, unyielding gazes of the 2 women whose lives he had tried to calculate. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, filled with a terrifying, crushing realization. His pristine suit was rumpled, his hair messy, his mathematical perfection reduced to a pile of dirty trash. I stepped off the podium, walked past him, and leaned in close to his ear. Remember when you asked me why I didn't smile during the photo shoot on Saturday? I whispered softly. I looked him dead in the eye, offering him a slow, brilliant, radiant smile. It's because I was saving it for tonight. The fallout from the rehearsal execution was swift, brutal, and absolute. By 8 a.m. the following morning, the video of the Excel wedding execution had amassed over 12 million views online. The Davis Group's stock plummeted by 34% at the opening bell, the single largest single-day loss in the company's 30-year history. 3 major institutional investors, including my father's logistics firm, formally pulled their capital and filed lawsuits for corporate misrepresentation and breach of contract. By noon, the police arrived at the Davis family estate. Carter was taken into custody for questioning regarding the grand theft of the antique diamond jewelry, a charge backed by my mother's original purchase, receipts, insurance appraisals, and Audrey's sworn testimony. I sat in my father's high-rise office, drinking hot black coffee while reviewing the legal filings with our corporate attorney. The door opened, and my assistant walked in. Chloe, Eleanor Davis is downstairs. In the lobby. She's been begging to see you for 2 hours. Is weeping. I didn't even look up from my documents. Tell security that if she doesn't leave in 5 minutes, we will file a restraining order for corporate harassment. Understood. 2 days later, Carter was released on bail, posted by his mother after she liquidated her private art collection. That evening, I was leaving my apartment to meet my friends for dinner when I found him waiting in the dimly lit hallway outside my door. He looked unrecognizable. The immaculate, polished corporate prince was completely destroyed. He wore a rumpled, unwashed shirt. His eyes were sunken with dark purple rings, and he smelled faintly of alcohol and stale rain. His hands were trembling. When he saw me walk out of the elevator, he took a frantic step forward, falling onto his knees right on the carpeted hallway floor. Chloe, he choked out, his voice cracked, raspy and broken. Chloe, please, just 5 minutes. I'm begging you. I stopped 10 feet away, my hands tucked into the pockets of my trench coat, looking down at him with absolute detachment. You have 2 minutes, Carter. Speak. I was wrong. I was an arrogant, disgusting fool, he wept, bowing his head, until his forehead touched my shoes, his hands hovering near my ankles, afraid to touch me. My mother, she pushed me to secure your family's investment. I thought I could manage both. I thought I was smart enough to control everything. He raised his bloodshot eyes, staring up at me with a desperate, pathetic plea. I don't care about the company anymore, Chloe. The board fired me this morning. My mother disowned me. I have nothing left. But I realized, when I saw you on that stage, you were the only woman I ever actually respected. You were the only one who truly understood me. I let out a soft, dry laugh. It was a genuinely amused sound. Carter, I said softly, leaning down slightly. You don't respect me. You just hate that your algorithm failed. He froze. You loved the feeling of being a master chess player. I continued, every word landing like a surgical cut. You loved having a perfect, classy bride to present to society, while keeping a sweet, dependent girl in a studio apartment. To boost your ego. You didn't love me, and you didn't love Audrey. You only loved yourself. No, that's not true, he shrieked, tears streaming down his hollow cheeks. I'll do anything, Chloe. I'll go to prison for the theft. I'll give you every cent I have left. Just tell me there's a chance, when I get out. Can we start over? I looked at him, the man who had ordered a hot Americano on our first date, believing he had solved me in 8 minutes. Carter, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket and opening the city hall. Appointment portal 1 last time. Remember the cancellation reason I typed 2 weeks ago? I showed him the screen. Reason for cancellation. The groom has already started a new family with someone else. I didn't cancel the appointment because I was angry, I whispered. I canceled it because you were irrelevant. I stepped past him, my heels clicking sharply against the floorboards, walking toward the elevator. Behind me, Carter's desperate, hysterical sobs echoed through the empty hallway, bouncing off the walls until the elevator doors slid shut, sealing him into his own silent nightmare. 6 months later, spring had returned to the city. The air was warm, smelling of fresh rain and blooming cherry blossoms. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of my newly opened interior design studio downtown, watching the morning traffic flow smoothly along the avenue below. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was an email from Audrey. She had moved back to her hometown in the countryside 3 months ago, supported by a modest settlement fund set up by a women's legal advocacy group I sponsored. Attached to the email was a photo of a healthy, chubby baby boy, sleeping peacefully in a sunlit wooden crib. Her message was short. He's healthy. He looks like me, not him. Thank you for showing me the door. I smiled, saved the photo, and closed my laptop. As for Carter Davis? Following his conviction for grand theft and corporate tax fraud uncovered during the Davis Group's liquidation audit, he was sentenced to 2 years in state prison. His mother, Eleanor, sold their suburban estate to pay off outstanding bank debts and moved into a small 2-bedroom condo in the outer suburbs, shunned by the very high society circles she had spent her life trying to impress. The perfect choice had collapsed into absolute nothingness. My office door opened, and my assistant walked in holding a steaming cup of iced coffee. "Chloe, your 10 a.m. client is here," she said cheerfully. "Oh, and I got your coffee iced latte double shot, extra oat milk." I took the cup, feeling the condensation cool against my fingers, and took a deep, delicious sip. It wasn't a hot Americano. It wasn't a calculated compromise. It was exactly what I wanted. I picked up my sketchbook, stepped out into the bright, sunlit showroom, and looked up at the vast, cloudless sky above the city. The sky was brilliant, clear, and infinitely blue. And for the first time in my life, it belonged entirely to me.